Welcome to RedBook Insider, where we bring you powerful books that can change the way you think, work, and live. Today's video dives into timeless lessons you can start applying right away. And if you'd like to grab your own copy of the book, there's a link in the description. Most people assume their mind is their best friend, their guide, their inner compass. But have you noticed how often that same mind becomes your loudest critic, your harshest judge, or the anxious narrator of your life? One moment, it encourages you to take a risk. The next moment, it convinces you that you will fail and be humiliated. Thoughts run on repeat like a broken radio station, and because we've been conditioned to believe them, we confuse noise with truth. This is where the book, Don't Believe Everything You Think, begins its bold message. Your suffering doesn't come from life itself. It comes from the meanings you attach through thought. Let's pause here. Imagine two people lose their job on the same day. One person thinks, "This is the end, I'll never recover, I'm worthless." The other thinks, "This is tough, but maybe it's a chance to start fresh." Same event, two different experiences. Notice the difference? It's not the reality that defines them, but the story they believed about it. And this is where suffering sneaks in. When you mistake your thoughts for unchangeable facts, you become trapped in an invisible prison. This prison is unique because it has no walls, no guards, no locks. The only thing holding you inside is the assumption that every thought your mind produces must be accurate. You've probably experienced this when lying awake at night, overthinking a mistake or imagining worst-case scenarios. Your body reacts as if it's real danger, heart racing, stomach tightening, mind spinning. But the danger was never out there. It was a movie playing inside your head. This is the mental loop Joseph Nguyen wants us to break free from. Here's a shocking truth the book highlights. Your brain is not designed to keep you happy. It's designed to keep you safe. And to do that, it constantly scans for threats, often exaggerating them. The voice of fear and doubt inside your head is simply your brain trying to protect you, but when you believe it blindly, you suffer. Realizing this is like stepping out of a dream. Suddenly you see not every thought deserves attention, and not every thought deserves belief. Now here's where things get interesting. If you're not the voice in your head, then who are you really? If your thoughts are like clouds drifting across the sky, then maybe you are the sky itself, vast, open, unchanged by what passes through. This idea is both liberating and unsettling. It liberates you because you no longer have to be chained to fear, anger, or self-criticism. But it unsettles you because it shakes the foundation of who you thought you were. If you are not your thoughts, then your true self might be far larger, calmer, and more powerful than you imagined. The first step to freedom, then, is awareness. Begin noticing your thoughts the way you'd notice traffic outside your window. Cars rush by, some loud, some slow, but none of them define who you are. The problem isn't that thoughts appear. The problem is when you climb into one of those cars and let it drive you somewhere you never wanted to go. And once you see this clearly, a new possibility opens. You can let thoughts pass without being pulled into their drama. Here's the hook for what's coming next. If suffering is born from believing your thoughts, then the real question is, how do thoughts create your identity? How do they build the me you've carried your whole life? In part 2, we'll explore how thought constructs the very sense of self, and how loosening that grip might be the single most freeing discovery you'll ever make. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, who am I? You might answer with your name, your job, your relationships, your culture, or even your past experiences. But notice something important. Every single answer is made of thoughts. I am successful. I am unlucky. I am shy. I am confident. These aren't facts written in stone. They're mental labels that get repeated until they feel like absolute truth. Joseph Nguyen explains that identity, the sense of a solid me, is largely a story created and maintained by thought. And the problem is, once you buy into that story, you live inside its limits. Imagine a child who is told repeatedly, "You're not good at math." That thought, planted by others, becomes their inner script. They avoid numbers, they freeze during tests, and eventually they believe, "I'm just not a math person." But look closely. This isn't reality. It's a self-image made of recycled thoughts. Identity is sticky because thoughts don't just pass through, they echo and reinforce each other. If you keep feeding a thought, it becomes a belief. If you keep feeding a belief, it becomes a lens. And through that lens, you see the world in a very narrow way. Think about your own self-descriptions. Which of them are truly yours, and which are hand-me-downs from parents, teachers, friends, or society? The shocking discovery is that most of what you call me is borrowed. That inner voice saying that you'll never succeed may not even belong to you. It could be the echo of someone else's doubt that you accidentally adopted as your own. Recognizing this is like realizing you've been wearing someone else's clothes for years, uncomfortable, too tight, and never really yours. Here's where the book offers freedom. If your identity is made of thoughts, and thoughts can change, then identity is not fixed. You are not trapped by who you believed you were. This doesn't mean you erase your personality or past. It means you stop mistaking them for the entirety of who you are. Imagine the relief of realizing, I am not permanently defined by my mistakes, nor am I permanently limited by my fears. What you thought was concrete turns out to be flexible, and yet there's a deeper twist. If you are not your thoughts, and you are not the shifting story they tell, then what remains when the story quiets down? This is where many people get nervous, because silence feels unfamiliar. The mind screams, without my labels, I am nothing. But silence doesn't mean emptiness, it means spaciousness. It's the background awareness in which thoughts rise and fall like waves in the ocean. The ocean is not limited by the waves. You are not limited by your thoughts. When you begin to see thoughts as temporary events instead of absolute truths, you loosen the chains of identity. Suddenly, I am anxious becomes, I notice anxiety arising. I am a failure becomes, a thought of failure just passed through. This small shift, from identification to observation, creates space. And in that space, suffering begins to dissolve, because suffering needs you to fuse with the thought. The moment you step back, its power fades. But let's not stop here. If identity is a story built from thought, then what about the circumstances of your life? Are they also shaped by the same invisible process? Could it be that your outer world mirrors your inner patterns? In part 3, we'll dive into how thought doesn't just create your sense of self. It quietly shapes the reality you live in every day. And once you see this, you'll realize that the world out there is not as separate from your mind as you once believed. If you've ever wondered why life sometimes feels like it's working against you, consider this possibility. What if the world you experience is partly a reflection of the thoughts you habitually believe? Joseph Nguyen explains that our outer circumstances often mirror our inner patterns, not because of magic or superstition, but because the way we think directly influences the way we interpret, respond to, and create our reality. Think of it this way. Your thoughts are like a lens. A dirty lens distorts the view, while a clean lens shows things as they are. If you live with a lens of constant fear, then even neutral events, like someone not texting back, look threatening. They must be upset with me. I must have done something wrong. But if your lens is shaped by curiosity and trust, the same event might look harmless. They're probably busy. I'll hear from them later. Notice how nothing about the outside world changed. Only the thought lens changed. Yet your emotional experience and your actions become completely different. Over time, these inner filters snowball into circumstances. A person who constantly thinks, I'm not good enough, might avoid opportunities, shrink back in conversations, or settle for less. The result? Their life reflects their belief. Another person who thinks, I can learn as I go, takes risks, attracts experiences, and creates growth. The circumstances seem to prove their thoughts right, but in reality, the thoughts were shaping the path all along. Here's a powerful example. Imagine two job candidates, both equally skilled, both equally qualified. One walks into the interview weighed down by anxious thoughts. They won't like me, I'll mess this up. Their body language becomes stiff, their tone uncertain, and they leave without making an impact. The other walks in with lighter thoughts. I'll share who I am and see if this is a fit. Their energy is open, their confidence natural, and they connect with the interviewer. Who gets the job? The circumstances didn't decide, the thought patterns did. Now you might ask, does this mean every bad thing in my life is my fault? Not at all. Life is bigger than thought. Illness, accidents, loss, and injustice exist. But here's the key insight. Suffering about those events is multiplied or softened, depending on the thoughts we carry about them. A breakup can feel like the end of the world if you think, I'll never be loved again. The same breakup can feel like painful growth if you think, this was meant to redirect me. The pain is real, but the depth of suffering depends on the story you attach. This shift is empowering because it means you are not powerless. You may not control every event, but you influence your experience of it. When you recognize that your thoughts color reality, you stop being a passive victim of circumstances. You begin to notice patterns. Every time I believe I'm unworthy, I withdraw. Every time I withdraw, I lose opportunities. Maybe the cycle isn't about bad luck. It's about an old thought I keep feeding. And once you see the cycle, you can interrupt it. But here comes the cliffhanger. If thoughts create identity and thoughts influence circumstances, then the next question is, what happens when you stop living on autopilot? What happens when you choose to direct your thinking instead of letting it run wild? In Part 4, we'll explore the power of purpose, how setting a clear inner direction transforms not only your mindset, but also the way life unfolds around you. And the surprising truth is, you don't need a grand mission to begin, you only need a simple shift of focus. Have you ever noticed how much easier it is to drift through life than to steer it? Left unchecked, thoughts scatter in every direction, worries about the past, predictions about the future, random comparisons, endless what-ifs. This mental noise doesn't just tire you out, it drains your energy because your attention has no anchor. Joseph Nguyen argues that purpose works like a compass. It gathers scattered thoughts into a clear direction, giving your mind a channel instead of a storm. And here's the surprising part. Purpose doesn't have to be grand. In fact, starting small is often more powerful. Think of purpose as alignment. Without it, thoughts act like wild horses pulling in opposite directions. One moment you're motivated, the next you're doubting, then procrastinating. But with even a simple purpose, I want to grow healthier, or I want to be kinder to people around me, your thoughts begin to align with that chosen direction. Doubts still arise, but instead of controlling you, they get filtered by the compass. Does this help or harm my purpose? That single question weakens the grip of distracting thoughts. The book offers a practical truth. You don't need to silence every negative thought to live peacefully. You just need a stronger focus that makes them less convincing. Imagine trying to keep a boat steady in the ocean. If you stare only at the waves, your thoughts, you'll panic and overcorrect. But if you fix your eyes on the lighthouse, your purpose, you'll ride the waves more steadily. This is why many people feel lost or overwhelmed. Not because life is impossible, but because they haven't chosen a guiding direction. Here's an exercise drawn from the spirit of Nguyen's teaching. Write down a micro-purpose for the week. Something small, clear, and actionable. For example, I want to finish reading one book. Or, I want to call one old friend and reconnect. Once you pick it, notice how your thoughts shift. Doubts will appear. You don't have time. They won't answer. You'll fail. But instead of believing them, you can now filter them. Does this thought move me toward my purpose or away from it? This practice trains the mind to serve rather than sabotage you. Purpose also transforms suffering. When challenges hit, instead of asking, why me? You begin asking, how does this fit into my purpose? This doesn't erase pain, but it reframes it. A setback becomes training. A rejection becomes redirection. Purpose turns random events into meaningful lessons. Without it, difficulties feel like punishment. With it, they feel like preparation. But here's where it gets even deeper. Purpose not only reshapes your inner dialogue, it begins to reshape your outer reality. You start acting with more consistency, which attracts new results. People sense your clarity and respond to it. Opportunities open because you show up differently. Slowly, life feels less like chaos and more like flow. And here's the paradox. Often, when you commit to a small purpose, a larger calling begins to reveal itself. You don't discover your grand mission by thinking endlessly about it. You discover it by living purposefully in small ways right now. Now let me leave you with a question that leads us into the next chapter of this journey. If purpose organizes your thoughts, what about your body and emotions? Because let's be honest, when you're exhausted, anxious, or stressed, even the clearest purpose feels heavy. In part 5, we'll uncover how your mind, body, and emotions are linked, and how changing your relationship with thought can free up energy you didn't know you had. Have you ever noticed how a single thought can change the way your body feels? One memory of embarrassment, and suddenly your stomach knots. One worry about the future, and your heart speeds up. One joyful expectation, and you feel light, energized, even unstoppable. Joseph Nguyen highlights a powerful truth here. Your body is always eavesdropping on your thoughts. This is why overthinking doesn't just tire the mind, it exhausts the body. Stress hormones flood your system, muscles tense, sleep suffers, and energy plummets. The good news? The opposite is also true. When thoughts become lighter and calmer, the body follows with more ease and vitality. Think of thoughts as signals and your body as the receiver. When the signals are filled with fear, self-criticism, or doubt, the body shifts into survival mode. It braces for impact even when no real danger exists. This explains why chronic stress feels so draining. The body is preparing for threats that never arrive. On the other hand, when thoughts shift toward curiosity, acceptance, or presence, the body receives signals of safety. Muscles loosen, breathing deepens, and energy becomes available for growth and creativity rather than defense. You can test this right now. Recall a time you felt grateful, really grateful, for something small, a smile from a stranger, a meal when you were hungry, a moment of kindness. Hold that thought for a few breaths and notice the body's response. Shoulders drop, jaw relaxes, and a sense of warmth spreads. Nothing in your outer world changed, yet your inner world triggered a physical shift. This is the hidden power of thought. It's not just mental, it's biological. But here's the catch. You can't simply force yourself to think positive. Fake positivity feels hollow because it still comes from struggle. Instead, Nguyen suggests building awareness. Start noticing which thoughts energize you and which ones drain you. This awareness alone begins to change the pattern. For example, you might catch yourself spiraling in self-criticism before a big task. Instead of pushing the thought away or drowning in it, you pause and recognize this thought is draining me. That pause weakens its grip, giving your body space to reset. Purpose, as we explored in part 4, also plays a role here. When you are guided by a clear purpose, even stressful circumstances feel less exhausting. Why? Because stress without meaning feels like chaos, but stress with meaning feels like training. Athletes push their bodies to the limit, yet they thrive because their effort is tied to purpose. In daily life, the same principle applies. A clear direction makes energy feel invested, not wasted. Another key lesson is rest. Not just physical rest, but mental rest. Many people sleep 8 hours yet wake up tired because their mind never stopped racing. Real rest happens when you allow thoughts to pass without clinging. Meditation, mindful breathing, even simple pauses in silence. These practices quiet the mental noise, giving the body a chance to recover. The quieter the mind, the lighter the body. Here's the empowering conclusion. When you shift your relationship with thought, you don't just change your mind, you reclaim your energy. You no longer live in constant survival mode. Instead, you live with steadiness, focus, and resilience. But this raises the next big question. If energy and vitality flow from thought, how do you channel that energy into lasting achievement? How do you move from momentary relief to building a life of consistent growth? In part 6, we'll explore how thoughts, habits, and persistence combine to create real success, and why achievement is less about dramatic breakthroughs and more about quiet, steady rhythms. Most people imagine success as a dramatic breakthrough, a sudden moment when everything changes. But Joseph Nguyen reveals something very different. Lasting achievement rarely comes from one big leap. It comes from steady rhythms powered by thought. When your mind is noisy and scattered, progress feels like pushing a boulder uphill. But when your thoughts align with purpose and flow, success begins to feel less like a struggle and more like momentum. Think of it like this. Every achievement has a hidden engine, repeated patterns of thought that quietly guide daily choices. A thought like, "I always give up," leads to half-hearted effort and unfinished projects. A thought like, "I can take small steps consistently," leads to persistence even on difficult days. Over weeks and months, these micro-decisions compound into very different results. The gap between failure and success isn't talent or luck, as much as it is the thought habits you live by. Here's the paradox. Many people chase motivation, waiting until they feel ready before they act. But motivation is unreliable. It rises and falls with mood. What Nguyen emphasizes is rhythm. When you create steady habits, working at a set time, showing up in small ways daily, you bypass the need for constant motivation. Rhythm doesn't ask if you feel like it. Rhythm simply carries you forward. This is why the most successful people often appear calm. They aren't straining every day, they're flowing with patterns that have become second nature. Imagine brushing your teeth. You don't debate it. You don't psych yourself up. You don't fear failure, you just do it. Now imagine if work, learning, or health routines became that automatic. That's the power of rhythm. Once you establish it, effort feels lighter because thinking about it no longer drains you. The decision is already made, you simply follow through. But what about setbacks? They're inevitable. Here's where thought makes the difference again. Without awareness, setbacks feel like confirmation of failure. See? I knew I couldn't do this. With awareness, setbacks become feedback. That didn't work. What adjustment can I make? Same event, opposite meaning. Over time, this shift builds resilience because you no longer collapse when things go wrong. You adapt, learn, and continue. Success stops being a fragile dream and becomes a natural outcome of persistence. Another insight from the book is that true achievement isn't only about external results, it's also about inner growth. As you train your thoughts to support persistence, you become someone who trusts themselves. You know you will follow through. That inner trust is priceless because it dissolves self-doubt. You stop questioning whether you can succeed. You begin to expect it. This expectation isn't arrogance, it's alignment. Your thoughts, actions, and identity match your direction. And here's the deeper gift. Rhythm brings peace. When you know you are steadily moving forward, you no longer obsess about catching up or comparing yourself to others. Your journey feels grounded. You realize that consistency beats intensity, and that the quiet daily steps you take are far more powerful than bursts of unsustainable effort. Now here's the hook leading into our final part. Rhythm and achievement are powerful, but without inner calm, success can still feel empty. Many people climb to their goals only to discover they are still restless, anxious, or unsatisfied. So what's missing? In part 7, we'll explore the final key, serenity. This is where freedom from thought reaches its deepest level, living with strength and peace at the same time. We've walked a long path together, seeing how thoughts shape identity, circumstances, purpose, energy, and even achievement. But Joseph Nguyen saves the deepest lesson for last. True freedom doesn't come only from success or clarity. It comes from serenity, the quiet strength that arises when you no longer need to believe every thought your mind produces. Think of serenity as the final test. You might have goals, rhythms, and even victories, but if your mind is still restless, you'll never feel truly free. The reason so many high achievers still suffer is because they've trained their actions, but not their relationship with thought. They chase, they achieve, but their inner voice still says, "Not enough." Serenity is the state where that voice loses its authority. Thoughts still come, but you meet them with calm awareness instead of panic. This doesn't mean life becomes dull or passive. In fact, serenity makes you more effective. When you aren't dragged into every mental storm, you conserve energy for what really matters. You respond instead of react. You listen more deeply. You make choices with clarity instead of fear. And perhaps most importantly, you begin to enjoy the present moment, not as a cliché, but as a lived experience. You taste your food instead of rushing. You notice the sky instead of scrolling. You connect with people instead of replaying your worries. Here's the quiet revolution. When thoughts lose their grip, you realize you were never broken to begin with. Suffering was never your destiny. It was a habit of belief. And the moment you stop mistaking thoughts for truth, peace emerges naturally. You don't have to create it. It was always there, waiting behind the noise. Now, imagine living from that space. Imagine waking up tomorrow and seeing your mind's chatter, not as commands, but as passing clouds. You are the sky, vast, open, unshaken. That's the gift this book leaves us with, a path to peace that begins and ends within. Before we close, let me ask you, did these insights resonate with you? If yes, then do something simple but powerful, like this video to spread the message. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next journey, and drop a comment sharing one thought you're ready to stop believing. I'd love to hear your perspective. And if you want to go deeper, if you want the full wisdom in your hands, the link to get your own copy of Don't Believe Everything You Think is waiting for you right there in the description. Owning the book lets you revisit these truths again and again until they're not just ideas, but lived reality. So, as we end this 7-part journey, remember, you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness that holds them, the space in which they rise and fall. And in that awareness lies the freedom, the serenity, and the strength you've been searching for all along.